And welcome to this Thursday lunchtime edition of Footy Talks. Great to have you all with us today. Footy Talks, as always, presented by Benjamin Moore. A couple of really good guests coming your way, including first up today, we'll be joined by the Toronto FC General Manager, Ali Curtis, as we look back on the MLS Is Back tournament and look ahead at what's to come. And then a big week. We talked about it last week with Jonathan David's impending move to Lille. That's been done now, KJ. You've got us a great guest coming up to talk about that as well.
Yeah, really excited to have James Eastham on. James is a good friend of mine. He's a French football scout, also a writer based in France and obviously back and forth between there and London. So we'll talk about the project that is Lille and educate a few more Canadian fans if they need educating. I think a lot of Canadian fans are very intelligent in that regard, but about Lille, the project, about, talk about the French league a little bit and its ability to develop young players. And, we can talk more about Jonathan as he's made that a move official now, as we heard from him on TSN this week.
Steve, the MLS Is Back tournament is in the books now, of course. We had a great month covering all the games on TSN. What's your overriding thought looking back on what happened down there in Orlando?
Tremendous success, Luke. I thought it was a terrific tournament. Football got better. Some really great games. Obviously, once we got through the difficulty, the start, it was disappointing to see Dallas and Nashville leave. And congratulations to Nashville after their 1-0 victory last night. Of course, their first victory in franchise history in MLS. David Accam goal, but it was sad that they had to go. Once we got up and running over a few kinks, I thought it was a tremendous success. We saw some great team football, and I think we're going to get an exciting season once we get back to the next phases of play. I do think that it's going to be a very open MLS season, and we might just see, some what's the word? I guess some unfancied teams, or maybe not the big boys that we normally expect to be in the playoffs and in MLS Cup, really competing for this year's title, KJ.
Yeah, I think when you throw everything, so to speak, in the mixing bowl, the fact that they hadn't played for months, and the fact that there's a lot of parity already in Major League Soccer over the course of a few weeks. I think that we saw what we expected, which was obviously a wide open tournament. We saw some teams, fancied teams, struggle. We saw unfancied teams come through and really succeed. And I think that when you break down that short amount of time, very short sample size during a Major League Soccer season, you can sometimes have that. We talk about Orlando and what they look like now. Well, back in 2018, they won about 6 or 7 games in a row out of nothing. And then obviously that fell away. So, we saw that they played really well then. I think now the overriding image for me will be, now can they take that success going forward, those teams, and carry that through? And then where we're going to be, when we can get through these phases of return to play, we can somehow have a playoff situation where, again, it appears it's going to be, Luke, that one-legged tie, that knockout tie where, as we said, in a game of football, anything can happen in one match, and that just leads to more parity, which I think is good.
Couple of interesting pieces of news coming down today with regards to Major League Soccer. Within the last few minutes, St. Louis announcing their team name. Everyone on board with St. Louis City SC?
How full? You could hardly say it there, and if you can't get it out properly, then not a lot of us can. I know I won't be able to.
Is it just, can we not just go with St. Louis City? I mean,
that's fine.
I think the SC thing is obviously part of the official name, but don't you? I mean, I don't really. Isn't it Orlando City SC as well?
Yeah. We never
really say that, do we?
No.
But we do always say New York City FC or NYC FC.
Yeah, but I think because it's New York and there's also, I mean, I know it's new, Red Bulls are there as well, but just distinguishes that a little bit as well. But yeah, it's
other guys, St. Louis City. It's a bit St. Louis City. It doesn't really sit great with me. It's a bit difficult.
The good thing is, Stevie, you're not a marketer and you don't live in St. Louis, so you have absolutely no say and no idea about whether
it's my opinion.
I think it's just. I've said it before. I think we're at this point in the great, the great thing that is soccer in this continent, that people are starting to get to the point where they're afraid of coming up with nicknames. They just want to keep it safe. United FC, things like that, and they don't want to be that first team that comes out and names the team after an animal again, and go back to, as if that's suddenly, backwards in the soccer. I don't think it's backwards at all. As I said before, we're way past that. We've got a wonderful, intelligent fan base in North America now that will get behind any team. Charlotte would have been great to come up with a different, like a Charlotte Town or something, but in the end, they're in that safe area right now. So it comes down to marketing and branding as well.
Okay, we're joined today by Toronto FC General Manager Ali Curtis. He's with us on the show. Great to have Ali, as he was with us a few months ago, as this all was just getting started in terms of the shutdown, and we wondered what Major League Soccer would look like going forward. And the world has changed a lot since Ali was last with us, but it's great that you can join us today on Footy Talks. Ali, thanks a lot for your time. Just wait as he unmutes the phone there, and then we'll be good to go.
Hey.
Ali, how are you?
I'm okay. Sorry, I'm in transit. I got a meeting that I got to go to, so I hope this works, if this is okay.
It's absolutely fine, no problem. How is life treating you now outside the bubble?
That's good. It's kind of like it goes in phases. Inside the bubble is pretty good. Outside the bubble, I was kind of within our own little bubble because we were in quarantine for 14 days. And then, so it's good to kind of be part of the community again, driving around, got a couple meetings and, hanging out. So that's been good.
Ali, how do you look back at the tournament? I know it ended a bit more prematurely than you would like to have for your club. Only just ended for us as broadcasters this week with a really successful tournament, I think, for Major League Soccer. But how do you look back and be involved in it? For you as a general manager of TFC, how did it go for you?
I think that there was a lot of positive takeaways. I think, much like everyone in so many different industries, the key word is just adapt and trying to be successful, not taking excuses. I think the first 5 to 7 days within the bubble were challenging, just because with the level of uncertainty and the rumors that you heard before the bubble. But once you got in and got acclimated, it was really good. The fields were good. It was good to get back to competition. I think we learned a little bit about ourselves and learned a little bit about kind of what life was going to be like, or at least the competition was going to be like. With no fans and all that and all those types of things that we never really experienced. So we had some good performances. You had a guy like Io really kind of take a next step, and hopefully that can continue with some consistency. And I thought overall we did fairly well as a team. I thought we didn't execute as well as we would have liked to in the second half of that first game against DC. You win that game and then you're pulling away 7 points from the group stage in terms of 2 wins and a tie. But overall, I thought we played well. Of course, the last game against NYCFC, we know, we could have come out different. We needed to come out differently against such a quality opponent. But it's a game that we wish we could take back, but we can't. But a lot of good takeaways, and looking forward to the next phase of the season.
Ali, I know you guys always like to win tournaments when you're in competitions, but was the major incentive or goal from this tournament to try and get the maximum group points heading into what hopefully will be phase 1, 2, 3 of MLS Is Back and back to regular season play?
Yeah, so a lot of different phases. It's the group stage, and then the MLS Is Back tournament, and then the playoffs, and then it's back to the regular season, and then it's the playoffs. And you try to be successful in every way. Ultimately, we want to finish what we started last year, and we made it to MLS Cup, and hopefully we can win that final game this year. And so in that sense, it was really important, like you said, Stephen, to get maximum points during the group stage of the tournament means so much. And staying undefeated, I think, during the group stage says a lot just in terms of what we can have to build on as we go into the regular season. So it was good to get the 5 points that we did, to go undefeated during that group stage, and we can build on that. Of course, we got to look at the video in terms of the game against NYCFC, and we learned a lot about that game as well, in terms of schedule congestion and how that impacts you physically and all those other types of things. We had some performances from players and that we learned about as well. So it was great to get the points that we need. Now we're focused on what's next. We'll see how that goes, but exciting to kind of get back to playing games.
Well, you talk about being focused on what's next there, Ali. What is next? Is there any further information about what comes now for yourselves and the three Canadian teams who we're expecting to play against each other over the course of the next few weeks? Where's that at right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of uncertainty, in terms of what's happening with our season, and uncertainty, of course, just because that's the world that we live in right now. Where Canada is at is they're in a much different place than where the U.S. is at, and so I really the way Canada has managed through the pandemic, with cases and all these types of things, has really they've done it in a really good way, and so everything that's happening south of the border in terms of what's happening in the U.S. Impacts what's going on. We're working with MLS, we're working with local government in terms of how we can continue our season and playing against the other Canadian opponents in Vancouver and Montreal. My understanding is that there'll be news about that later on today in terms of how we can get back to playing. Ultimately, we need to have approvals from not just all the relevant government associations, but also MLS. And so my understanding is that we'll have some information on that later today, which hopefully will be exciting, and we'll give a little bit more details in terms of when, where, and what time we'll be playing.
And how many scenarios do you have moving forward after that? I think what the league is doing is very wise in terms of the 6-game blocks and the different stages of the regular season not coming out now. And as we've seen with Major League Baseball having to tear up a schedule 3 or 4 days into it. How do you plan right now for what comes after you've played against these Canadian teams? And there have been reports that you might decamp and go to the Red Bulls, or possibly to some other Eastern Conference teams and just hang out there for a little while. How many options or balls are you juggling in the air right now, Ali, with waiting to see where this all lands?
Yeah, there's a lot of balls that we're juggling in the air. A lot of different options and different scenarios. It seems like each day is a different scenario. So I think if we look at it first, is how can we get back to playing within Canada, and then hopefully the next phase of what's going on is how can we figure out what's going to happen once we've done hopefully playing Vancouver and Montreal a few times. And so we're exploring every single option. Ideally, I think the information that we're getting back is that what's safest is if we can really find solutions that reduce travel, that reduce contact, where we're still able to isolate and those types of things. And so those are kind of the guideposts. But in terms of the actual solutions, in terms of, is it a Toronto Blue Jays type scenario? Is there something different? We don't have those answers right now. We're working on them. And, the only thing we can do is continue every single day. We're talking to the government, and we're talking to MLS. We're talking to other MLS clubs to figure out what makes sense, what are different solutions. I think hopefully, we'll hopefully have some more answers in the coming weeks or so. But right now we don't have those solutions, but everybody's working tirelessly each day to try to figure out all the different options.
And Ali, as you manage a squad, and obviously the manager is in your title, with that lack of clarity, how are you managing your players? What is the message to them right now, when I'm sure there's a lot of questions coming in, and really you just probably want them to focus on what they do best as a footballer, do you?
Yeah, we're trying to, the theme with all these things, whether a football player, whether you're a parent, is to be able to adapt, and the questions for us as parents are, is your child going to go to school, is physically in school, they're going to be online, all these, and still the decision that you make, maybe not even having certainty and conviction in terms of what that looks like. The reality is that this is a virus that we're learning more about each day, and what we try to do internally is to take that spirit that we're going to have to adapt. There's going to be changes. Training times may change. Game times may change. all these different types of things of uncertainty. But, the one thing that we know is that, we've been playing this game for our entire lives. And so that's what we're focused on. And to the extent we can get back to playing, that's got to be our sanctuary so we can have our best chances of success. So really, and trying to give as much information as possible when we receive it. So, and our players and our staff knowing that things may change. But to the extent we can provide information, we started a steady stream of dialogue and communication internally with our players every Tuesday and Friday. At a minimum, they receive an email as to the updates in terms of what's going on from training, from conversations with the league, conversations with local government. They understand that all those things are subject to change. So trying to be honest and transparent about the situation, even if we don't have an answer or there isn't a solution, is information. And those are some of the things that we're trying to do at the club to really to have calm minds, to be adaptable so that we can have our best chance at success.
And Ali, I'm just wondering here how difficult that is to do that within, a global transfer window. You've got players potentially coming and going. I'm sure there's inquiries for your players or guys that you like. And how do you navigate that when you don't really know what your schedule is, who you can allow to leave the club on a short or long-term basis, or bringing people in? Is that another intricacy, a difficulty that comes into the discussion here?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, especially, when you look at even not just the first team, but also our USL team, where we were unable to have a season with that team. And so, a lot of the conversations that we've had is not just with first team players and agents and those types of things, but also with our second team and those agents. And where are we going to find programming for those players? And can we loan them out to a CPL team, or can we loan them out to, an international club? Where is that club? How are they handling safety regulations and quarantine periods and those types of things? So what we're doing is trying to communicate as best as we can, trying to involve, all the different authorities at an early stage, having conversations with MLS, probably more so than we've ever had, in terms of when there's an idea, there's a thought, or how to create a solution for potential transaction or potential issue. Really having, conversations internally within MLSE with regard to our immigration council and all those types of things. So just trying to communicate with as many people as possible. And then even when we've done that, we're not in control of everything. So, what I would say is, though, we feel good about the group. Of course, the tournament didn't end how we wanted it to, but I think we've got a lot of quality into the side. And hopefully once we get healthy, fully healthy, and going, I think we've got a good team, and I think we've got a really great chance of achieving our goals this year.
Well, from the day that you arrived in Toronto, Ali, I think it's fair to say that there have been a fair few challenges thrown your way in different kinds of situations from the moment you walked through the door. Maybe things that you would never have expected would have happened. But I know you've got to rush to a meeting. Really appreciate you coming out. Just one last question. It's a really important one as well, because we heard from Justin Morrow and from some other players within your organization about your leadership through a difficult time, and especially your involvement with what was going on with the Black Players for Change, and that your participation meant so much to them in that show of unity before that first game at the MLS Is Back tournament. So I want to get your thoughts on what that was like for you, being involved in all of that.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing that. What I would say is it's an incredibly emotional and challenging period of time for everyone of all gender, all races, all colors. We're all just trying to deal with all these types of things, and adding a layer with regard to the pandemic, it makes it even that much more challenging. I just personally, I try to just, whether it's communication to my staff and my players, and even in communication with Justin and all the folks that are included in Black Players for Change, is just to really try to come from a place of truth and authenticity, try to be transparent with our message, try to be real with people in these different times, to be open, to be 24/7 as well. And you know, I was really proud of Justin and the group. I mean, they as a former player as well in MLS, you know, they did something that no group of black players in the history of Major League Soccer was ever able to do, and they organized in a very great way, in a powerful way, and got together, formed a group, got aligned, created goals, and started to make some action. And you know, the demonstration, the event on the first game was just a powerfully emotional and fantastic night, and it was one of the greatest memories I'll ever have in my life. And I was really, I just felt fortunate to be a part of it. And it wasn't just, you know, on being on the field was one aspect of it. It was just taking the elevator down and seeing everyone in the lobby and walking through the hallway and seeing the, you know, because it was a bit top secret. You know, it was an amazing night. And you know, I think it was powerful for the people involved, and I think it was powerful for the people that watched and that saw. So elated to be part of it, and fortunate and honored. So you know, we're supporting Justin. We also, it was one of those moments where you support every other player on every other team. And it was a real brotherhood that we experienced, you know, in that moment, and still do, you know. And I think that we all in industries now, we're all around, and we're finding ways to connect in a way that is so much stronger and authentic than it was when we just had the luxury of having a cup of tea with someone, or just a coffee, or just a chat, you know, in the hallway. So it was such a moment, and it was great, and I was honored to be part of it. I'm proud as well to be part of it, and proud of every individual that had a part in that. And I'd also, you know, would be remiss if I did not give MLS a lot of credit as a league for helping organize that. You know, it's really difficult to bring that amount of people during a pandemic, to make sure everyone's safe in such a quick amount of time. And I thought they did a great job in helping with transportation and logistics and all these types of things. You know, it was an organic and natural event. At the same time, there was a lot of behind the scenes and people working very, very diligently to make it happen. So it was incredible. It was incredible.
Thanks, Ali, for being
Fantastic.
with us. We always appreciate you taking the time to come on, your openness, your honesty. We look forward to whatever comes, whether it's later this afternoon or the next couple of days, with an announcement of what happens moving forward, and seeing TFC and the rest of the Canadian teams back on the pitch very soon.
Thanks, Ali. Great
Thanks,
job.
Ali.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me. Hope you and your families are well. Sorry I had to take it from the car, but be in touch soon. Call me anytime.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank you.
Ali Curtis, the General Manager of Toronto FC, with us on Footy Talks, presented by Benjamin Moore. Don't forget, all stores are open now at Benjamin Moore, and you can go to the website for inspiration. Lots of ideas on colours, DIY projects, and much more. Thanks to Benjamin Moore for supporting Footy Talks. One thing I would say about what Ali had to say there is that there is so much work still to be done. And that is evident by what happened in Dallas last night, where the doors were open for fans to come in. And Dallas players actually got booed for kneeling during the anthem by their own fans. And if you want to see what kind of an impact that has had on people and players of that team, go look at what Reggie Cannon had to say after that game last night. Incredible statement from him about what that all means to him. And it was just, it was really disappointing to see that happen. And even more disappointing to hear him afterwards, Stevie, say that it was something that he actually expected would happen when they heard there was going to be an anthem there, and they knew that that's what they were going to do, that he thought that some of his own fans would boo.
Yeah, it's absolutely tragic, isn't it? That he knows what's coming, and just terrible, really terrible that we've seen so much change so far, but we still have miles to go, guys. We know that. You know, it's one thing, people getting together, and I love it, I commend it, but it's going to take a long time for us to actually impact deep-rooted systemic racism, you know, from generation to generation, and in certain areas the continent that is just, you know, like I say, it's been there for hundreds of years. So it's absolutely horrible. And good on Reggie Cannon, good on, you know, us guys bringing it up. Everyone, let's keep talking about this. Let's keep it going. This is about education. This is absolutely about changing deep-rooted things within certain people, KJ. And horrible moment. It must have been really tough for their players, and, you know, I feel for them, but good on them for speaking out after it and sticking to their guns, and we're alongside them. We'll support them all the way, won't we?
100% alongside them. You know, every credit that they speak up, and, you know, not surprising that it's happened, and you know what, it's going to continue to happen. And what needs to continue to happen in the face of that is these kind of conversations, the conversations that we're talking about, the conversations that Ali's talking about, the wonderful quotes from the heart from Reggie Cannon and other players, just to educate people what they've gone through, what they continue to go through on a daily basis, and why they are doing what they are doing. And there's no disrespect of a nation or a flag or an anthem, that they're going out of their way to do this for the right reasons, and the strong message that they have to send. And that's up to all of us to continue that, for us as broadcasters to give these people a voice if they continue to have it and they want to talk about it as well. But yeah, I mean, you could go a lot further and discuss whether there's really fans should have even been in the seats. To be quite frank, they're already in a privileged position, and some of them are already causing more trouble as it's worth.
Another thing I just want to say, Luke, anyone with Instagram, please go on and look at Black Players for Change account. They made a little 8-minute video about the first game Ali spoke about, and they've got different players on there, and every one of the guys speak absolutely brilliantly and honestly, openly. Tough conversations. The one that really struck me was Bill Hamid. The guy's in tears. This is a giant, a man, a brilliant goalkeeper, a great fella, and he breaks down because he's talking about the past and some of the kids in his neighbourhood that he goes and works with on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think he says, where he's in the community centres, and he's in tears. It's very emotional. It really got me. Brilliant 8-minute video. Bill Hamid, exceptional the way he speaks about it in that video.
Really appreciate Ali Curtis coming on and talking about that amongst all the other things. And sounds like there will be some good news coming up with some games between the three Canadian teams, TFC Montreal and Vancouver, as the next phase of the regular season begins. Off the top of the show, I didn't get a chance to mention the other big story in Major League Soccer today, which is Blaise Matuidi coming into Inter Miami, not even as a designated player. There's a good MLS one for you. He's a TAM player, targeted allocation money.
Don't ask me about that, Luke.
The owner of Inter Miami, David Beckham, who he played with at PSG. Of course, he's a World Cup winner. Before I get your thoughts on this, KJ, because you are the quiz master of all time, right? You are Mr. Quizmaster. You don't have to answer now, but I'm interested to see just off the top of your head how many of these you can get. Inter Miami's Blaise Matuidi will be the 12th World Cup winner to play in Major League Soccer. Okay? How many can you name right off the top?
Oh, my goodness. Put me on the spot there, haven't you? I thought you were going to ask me how did Inter Miami figure out Blaise Matuidi on a TAM deal.
That's probably a more difficult question.
I'm like, what can I say? What can I say there? You know what I mean? I'm like...
Do you want a few seconds just to let it process?
Schweinsteiger from 2014.
Lothar Matthäus.
Correct.
Obviously from Germany, 1990. Let's think about this. Kleberson, did he win a World Cup in 2002? Yeah.
He did. Yeah.
Branco.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he won one for sure. I'm trying to think other World Cup winners.
Recent one. There's another recent one, isn't there?
There's a few, isn't there? Obviously, we got to go through this in a second. 2006.
One played in Montreal.
Perlo. Nesta.
Perlo's one.
Nesta.
Thierry
Henry.
Obviously, yeah.
That's pretty impressive. You've got them all apart from two, I think.
David Villa.
Pirlo. Did we say Pirlo?
David Villa.
David Villa.
Yeah. We got one more. Is that?
We've got two more.
Two more. I feel like
a Brazilian and a French player.
Brazilian. I feel like 94 was a Brazilian player, another Brazilian player.
No, a Brazilian player that was in the league much sooner.
Kaká.
Oh, actually, Kaká is one. And did you mention Denilson?
Denilson, yeah, of course.
Okay, so there's one more that you've got to get. One more than the French player.
He's French. Djorkaeff.
Correct.
Yes,
That's impressive. I mean,
we did it together.
I would have expected from our days of the Europa League quiz, I would have expected KJ to come strong on that one. But Stevie came in with the help there. James Eastham joining us very shortly to talk about Jonathan David's move to Lille. A big time for the Canadian striker. But before that, Blaise Matuidi coming into Miami, not as a designated player. You joke about it, KJ, but this is an absolute steal of a signing, isn't it? If that's the case, and they've still got room for somebody else.
Yeah, look, Stevie and I were talking about Blaise Matuidi, and I want to talk about him as a player, not how they've got him on a TAM deal, because like I said, I really don't know how they've done that. But Blaise Matuidi...
He probably hasn't got a small condo in Miami.
I'm glad you said that.
$30 million house. To be honest.
So Blaise Matuidi is, Stevie and I were talking about this in the green room ahead of the final on Tuesday. Having rewatched the World Cup final when France played that game, and obviously we did every game during the 2018 World Cup, Matuidi's role in that system was absolutely integral into them winning the World Cup. It was so difficult to do that role and play in that role, Stevie, as a left-sided. Basically, they played a 4-4-1-1 with Pogba and N'Golo Kante, but he would come over and make up a midfield three. He's so intelligent, and I think intelligence is the word that comes to mind for me as a player. He obviously has got all the technical ability. He'll be smart. He can play higher up the field if he needs to for Inter Miami. But as an overall midfielder, as a footballer, this is a very versatile, intelligent player that Inter Miami are going to love to have around.
Yeah, a brilliant football player. I agree with you, KG. He's intelligence off the charts to play the way that he did in that left-hand side, but tucking in and then stopping the fullback and getting out there. Incredible fitness levels as well. And I think he's a guy that, in some ways, it's a bit of a shock because you normally expect that number 9, number 10, who knows, maybe there's one of them coming to Miami with this TAM deal. But well, being more a kind of central midfield player, it's a little bit surprising. But this guy could play anywhere. The levels he's played at, he could play a bit higher up. He could get forward a bit more, score a number of goals. I think it's a great signing, a real significant signing. A guy still with a lot of great football in his legs. So, what a coup that is to get him on a TAM deal. Leave yourself some room as well, and it just shows you that everyone's pushing the boundaries when it comes to how they can make this thing work, because you can change the deal. So it could be a TAM for this year, guys. It could be DP next year. You can structure it in different ways. It could be some other forms.
It could be whatever David Beckham wants it to be.
Well, he's David Beckham. He does what he wants, and none of us have got any qualms about that. He's the man, and he's proved it yet again with this signing.
I wouldn't like to be on the other end of the phone call. Sorry, Dave, you're not allowed to do that, mate.
Yeah, I know. You need an extra bit of general allocation money to be able to do that and make that switch. And you've got to switch your discovery rights for a claim of a draft pick, and then you'll be okay.
And then
your owner posts a picture of the guy that he's signing, playing alongside him with PSG, and saying, "Welcome to my friend," and a great human being. It's so cool. It's like this guy's on another level, Beckham. I love it. I hope he does great things there.
Let's bring in James Eastham, who joins us from Europe right now. He is a person who has a lot of experience in French football. He's a scout. He's an analyst as well. You might have read some of his work or seen him with 442 when Saturday comes, various different publications. And we wanted to get James on because a lot of talk in Canada right now is about Jonathan David and that Canadian record fee. Jonathan David making the short move across the border from Belgium to get to Lille, and what that's got to do for him and his development as one of Canada's big hopes moving forward to that hosting of the 2026 World Cup, along with someone like Alphonso Davies. James, really appreciate your time. Just before we get into Jonathan David and Lille, with your background in French football, will there be a lot of surprise at Blaise Matuidi landing at Inter Miami after leaving Juve?
Yeah, there will be, I think, Luke. Yeah, I was really enjoying your chat there about him, and I agree with everything that was said about Blaise Matuidi, a fantastic footballer. What was interesting about that World Cup role was that it was one that he was brought into play after the tournament had started. He'd never actually been used. We'd seen him play that role at club level, but he'd never really been used in that role on the left-hand side in a sort of 4-2-3-1 and then filling in midfield for France. And I think it sums him up that he was able to do that in a World Cup adapt to it straight away, and then end up having a fantastic tournament. So when I saw the news, I was a little bit surprised. He's 33 years old now, maybe come a little bit earlier than I thought. Obviously, there's changes at Juventus with the change of manager, whether he felt it was the right time to move on. I think the one thing that people in France will wonder is, has he ruled himself out of Euro 2021, as it will be, by leaving the European scene? Now, we have had players in this France setup who have continued to play even though they've left Europe. André Pierre Gignac would be the example, who went over to Mexico, and Didier Deschamps was willing to keep him involved. Now, I think Matuidi has spoken to Deschamps about it, so he may have been told, yeah, it's not a problem. Came maybe a year earlier than I thought, but what a fantastic signing there. You just love him, wouldn't you, to be at your club? So I can absolutely see why they've gone for him, because he's been a tremendous footballer for many, many years.
Yeah, fantastic. James, great to see you again. Thanks for coming on our show. We'll get to Jonathan in a minute, but I know there's a lot of people in our country that have been reading a lot over the last 72 hours, so to speak, about Lille. And, they're a club that you know extremely well, and obviously a club that has nurtured, developed, and sold on some outstanding players over the last few years. So maybe you can just take our listeners and viewers into that football club and what they do well and why they do it so well.
Yes, well, it's been an interesting decade or so, I would say, at Lille. They won the French League back in 2011, so nearly a decade ago now, with a completely different regime and a completely different team. We had Eden Hazard in that team, Johan Cabaye, Gervinho, Mathieu Debuchy, Rudy Garcia was the coach, who's since been to Roma, Marseille, and is now at Lyon. So that was really what put Lille on the map. That team broke up. Those players were sold for a lot of money. The club then went through a bit of a fallow period. But over the last 3 or 4 seasons, they've developed into a club with a very clear idea of what they want to do. And that is to buy players with great potential, buy them relatively cheaply, and actually Jonathan David, in their view, would fall into that category, and then sell them on for profit. And we've seen them do that really, really well over the last couple of seasons while maintaining a good standard of performance. So that's really the model of club that he's moving into. They don't expect to challenge PSG for the French title, because nobody does, but they do see themselves as a club that can challenge for the top 3 every season by having a system where they bring in players like Jonathan David, get a couple of seasons out of them, and then probably sell on for profit. The 2 examples we've seen of that most recently are Nicolas Pepe, who had a great time at Lille and then went over to Arsenal for around £70 million. And we've had another example this summer with Victor Osimhen, the striker, who again came in from Belgium. He's only had 1 season at Lille. They've sold him to Napoli this summer for around £60 million, which is a huge profit. So that's the model of club that he's moved into. And I think it's why for a lot of people the move makes perfect sense, because he should get first team action. He should be an important player. There's no danger of him sitting on the bench as there would be if he'd gone to a bigger club straight away. It's a great platform for him. He'll be challenging near the top of League One, which is, it's still a good league. He'll be playing European football. Lille in the Europa League rather than the Champions League, but it's still a good standard. So, he's only 20, isn't he? It's a great club to be at, because he'll be a very important player in a good League One club where he'll get great exposure and should do very well, because they are set up to make the most of young players who arrive.
James, this is a significant step up for them, though, isn't it? Coming from Belgium to Ligue 1, it's a league with a lot of quality, a lot of athleticism in the defending. What do you like in his game that might be unique, that might allow him to succeed at Lille, and what will he expect, I should say, from the type of defending that he'll come up against from the teams in general in Ligue 1?
Well, I think one of the questions at the moment people are asking is, where is he actually going to play? Because he has got a certain flexibility to where he can line up in the attack. We saw in Belgium last year, he can play sort of as a number 9, but he's kind of got the qualities of a 10 as well, and can play behind 2 strikers. Interestingly, he's spoken to the French media today, actually, for the first time, and he's hinted that he thinks he's going to be playing in a 4-4-2 at Lille. Now, they did use a 4-4-2 quite a lot last season. They also used the 4-2-3-1. But it sounds like he, at the moment, thinks he'll play in a 4-4-2. So potentially, as a centre forward, as a number 9, alongside somebody else, almost as a replacement for Victor Osimhen, who's left. So I think that would be quite interesting. When I saw him last season, I quite liked him a little bit off a main striker playing a little bit deeper, because I think the way he arrives in the box is very, very good. But it looks like he could be playing maybe as the straight replacement for Victor Osimhen. We'll have to wait and see. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of physical defending in France, so that'll be a challenge for him. I tend to think if your movement in the box in France is good, then you do have a chance of doing well in that division. We've seen that recently with, obviously with Mbappe, but a player like Wissam Ben Yedder at Monaco, who's come back into France from Spanish football, did really, really well last year. His movement in the box is good. And I think Jonathan David, he can certainly bring that to this Lille team. If you look at their squad at the moment, he doesn't actually have a great deal of competition to play as a central striker. They may go out and buy somebody else now that they've got so much money for Victor Osimhen, but I get the feeling they do want to see him up there playing as a central striker. They've got quite a few players already who can play a little bit out wide and as a number 10. So he obviously offers them flexibility, but he could be that main striker. And you know, we saw last year in Belgium that he was able to score freely, has done for 2 years now. It will be a step up, but I think the feeling at Lille is because Osimhen did so well doing a similar sort of move across from Belgium, they feel that at the same stage in Belgium, Jonathan David is where Osimhen was when he came in. And just on that basis, they think, you know, they think he should be able to do really well straight away.
You spoke to Jonathan David this week, KJ, for that piece we had on TSN at halftime of the MLS Is Back final a couple of days ago. It does seem as if, as James is indicating there, he wants to play as a 9, doesn't he? And I think that's what he's been sold in terms of this move.
Yeah, it sounds like it's Luis Campos, right? James, the sporting director there, that Luis has told him that he wants to, you know, we see you as a 9. And I think one of the reasons why they brought in Burak Yilmaz is to maybe play alongside him and try and build around that team as a front two as well. But you know, Jonathan is a pretty quiet, humble guy, as you'll find out, James, more and more as you cover him. But he is extremely confident. And I think it was quite bullish of him, you know, as an interviewer, and I've interviewed him a number of times, you try and get things out of these people. But he wasn't shy in saying that he saw that as a project, James. He wasn't shy in saying that both sides, him and Luis Campos, have been in a boardroom with their agents to say, look, you know, we hope, both of us hope in a year or two, that we will both profit from this. And I think that was interesting to hear from a young 20-year-old, certainly us in Canada, to hear that a Canadian player has gone for 30 million euros, and then he even thinks more going forward. And that's got to be a good sign, James, of the confidence in the project.
Yeah, definitely. Very interesting to hear you say that. Yeah, I haven't interviewed him myself, but he's come across incredibly well early on. I think he's been very patient this summer. He's trained a full pre-season at Ghent, but he's not been involved in any of their pre-season games at all. Obviously, some players, they can get a little bit twitchy about that. There's been absolutely none of that, I don't think, in this situation. No. So, although it's dragged on maybe a little bit longer than some people wanted, I think it's been managed quite well. And you mentioned Luis Campos there. You know, he's a big figure at Lille because he's not. I don't think he's on the staff there. I think he's got a consultant role, but he is the transfer overlord for Lille. They put a lot of faith in what he says. And he's really built this model of, you know, buying the players that he wants because he feels that they'll have a sell-on fee in the future. And, you know, they back his judgment a lot. He brought in Osimhen. And I know he's been in touch with Jonathan David for a long, long time now. So, yeah, they probably have plotted it out, certainly in pencil, if not in pen yet, what will happen in the future. And, you know, if he's as confident as that at 20, then obviously, you know, he's got a great chance because he will get the games and he'll have a real chance to show what he can do, I think. Straight away, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat controversial, sorry, KJ, that he's actually saying that. And I'd like to ask James what the Lille fans will think about that because, you know, if a guy was going to Celtic or Rangers and they were saying they're looking to step up to the Premier League or a Newcastle or whoever, they want to play in the top 4 teams. I think that would go down pretty poorly with the fan base, you know. And I know he's confident that he thinks he's going to do bigger and better things. But do you think that the Lille fans just accept that? Is that just kind of the thing in France, or will they be a little bit miffed at that?
Well, it's a good point. It might have come a bit too soon for some of them. You know, he's not played yet and he's already talking about the next move. I mean, they're kind of hardened to it. They've seen it really since Hazard, Cabaye, Debuchy, that team broke up. They've seen it recently. So they're under no illusions, about the fact that it is a stepping stone club. But yeah, it's a good point. It's one of those things that, it may come back to haunt him, I suppose, if he has a bad time. I mean, I saw this a little bit with Divock Origi. Divock Origi was at Lille. He joined Liverpool a year in advance and had a season back at Lille on loan. The fans got on his back, when he had a few bad games, feeling being, which was completely, untrue, I think. But the feeling was, he already wishes he was at Liverpool. The usual thing. It's probably entirely unconnected to why he had a few bad games. So it can happen, and they can turn on you at Lille. Actually, it's not that they're spoiled by success because they were, a title-winning side not that long ago, but they can turn on you if they have a bad time. Looking at the squad this season, I think they should be in good shape to compete at the top. So you'd like to think he'll be joining a club where things will be going well and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's something I think to bear in mind. I find personally, they can be quite a harsh fan base sometimes.
Just finally, James, it was really interesting watching that PSG game yesterday. They made it through right at the end. They were overpowering Atalanta at the end there. You felt that something was going to happen. But one of the most interesting things for me was just the reaction on the bench and of the players who weren't involved in the stands of just how much that moment meant. And for the Bielsa lookalike Thomas Tuchel sitting on his blue box by the side of the pitch there with his leg in plaster. He saved his job there, hasn't he, with that one moment?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's difficult to overstate how huge those final 4 or 5 minutes were for PSG last night. Yeah, if they'd gone out again without getting to the last 4, it would have been an absolute catastrophe. And to have done it against a smaller club, however fantastic Atalanta, are, would have been a catastrophe for the club. So the way they've turned it around is just absolutely vital, I think, for this setup. And you're absolutely right. See Verratti and Di Maria celebrating in the stands. There are so many people at that club who, it's not that the last 4 in and of itself is good enough, but they hadn't got to that stage yet in this regime. They did, back in 1995 did PSG, but under this regime, they hadn't actually got to the last 4 of the Champions League. So already, in a way, the pressure's now off a little bit, actually, going into the semi-finals, because it would have been such a catastrophe had they not done it. They've got a couple of days now to regroup. Let's see if Mbappe's a little bit fitter. Let's see if he's able to start the game, because they're obviously a much better team when he's on and far less predictable. But yeah, it was a very, very dramatic end and really a pivotal moment, I think, in the history of PSG, because by getting to the last 4, they're still in the hunt. But even if they don't win it this year, having got this far, it puts them on a slightly different footing now in that competition going forward, which I think was really, really important for them.
James, just let me ask you one question before we let you go. And again, thanks so much for your time. What's the reputation of that club within France when you scout games, when you talk to other clubs? Are they despised? Because I feel like they're almost such a polarizing club now. You go on, social media is full of noise. It's most of the time not what we're looking at anyway right now. But yesterday, you could sense that everybody was just crushed with this wonderful romantic story of Bergamo and Atalanta just being demolished by this, the power brokers from, with the oil money. But what's it like within France? Is there an acceptance that they're the big bullies and we can, we'll deal with it?
Yes, there is. I would actually split PSG into 2 completely different clubs, if you like, because there's still a huge amount of respect for the PSG that was, if you like, before the Qatar era. I get annoyed myself when people say, they're a plastic club, and I get all of that, but they were actually a really, really good football club and team in the 1990s. They reached 5 consecutive European semi-finals in the 90s across the 3 competitions as they were then. With Rai and Valdo and George Weah and David Ginola. So that was a club that was actually punching a little bit above its weight at the time. Now that's changed. And I think, younger generation of fans they don't remember that. So I think they are despised is not too strong a word in some ways. But I think also in France, when you speak to people in the game, there's still a huge amount of respect for what they've done, historically. It's obviously a completely different setup now. And, they're flat track bullies really in League One. We had that Monaco team who won the league 2017, but that's unlikely to happen this season. So it's going to carry on. So it's almost like a completely different team. But when you read historical articles about PSG or see the odd thing on TV, it is like talking about a totally different club, and I think a lot of people miss those days because they were really well run. They bought some fantastic players and did some great things. Now, it's a bit too easy for them in France. They're pretty unpopular. While I do think a lot of people do enjoy, watching them when they're at their best, because at their best they are still great to watch in France.
Yeah, they are.
You know what? It was just nice to have the Champions League back. You don't realize, how much those games mean and how great they are to watch. It was fantastic yesterday seeing that game, and what a dramatic finish. James, really appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Footy Talks today, presented by Benjamin Moore. Great insight into what Jonathan David has got to face at Lille. Thanks for your time.
Cheers. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
James Eastham with us on Footy Talks. The end to that game, you must have been involved in some of those games, Stevie, maybe where you're on the Atalanta side of things and you're defending and you can see the team in front of you has just not got much left to give. But then you look at Mbappe's running one way, Neymar the other. I mean, if they hadn't got a goal back at the end of that game, it would have been more of a surprise, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have been a huge surprise, a massive shock, to be honest. As great as Atalanta was, as James says, for PSG to go out to that level of team or that standing of team would have been a massive shock. So credit to them for finding the spirit, I guess, and the energy and the quality to get the job done. Atalanta were tiring near the end. It was just wave after wave. It was trying to hold on to what they had, but a big result, an absolutely massive result in the history of PSG. A big night for Neymar. KJ, I think you tweeted a couple of things about it, but I thought he was outstanding the way he kind of grabbed this team, maybe more so in the sort of absence of Mbappe in terms of his full fitness and saying this is going to be my job to get us over the line here. I thought it was absolutely magnificent and a big moment for them. The question is, can they win it, KJ? They got enough to see it through and potentially lift the trophy?
I think they probably do, and I think it could be a big momentum for them. I thought it was a really symbolic moment for Neymar, and I think no matter what Neymar does, as I said earlier, he's almost at the perfect club because PSG are probably one of the most polarizing clubs in world football, and I think he is the most polarizing footballer on the planet. I really do. And, the reason why when I tweeted about him last night, I didn't tweet anything about the way that he played. I tweeted about the belief, is because I felt that was so important, because a lot of criticism about Neymar is always about his character and about his personality and his desire and does he care enough. And I tell you what, he willed them. And I use that word in my tweet. He willed them over the line. People can say Mbappe was a better player. Yeah, maybe he was when he came on. I'm not talking about tactics now and technicians. I'm talking about will. And he willed them. And he had that sense that he did when Barcelona, when he went against PSG, when they capitulated in that 6-1 game, when he carried them over the line. And I think that's the Neymar we love to see, and I want to see more of it because the game is better when the best are performing at that level and they have that desire to carry them through. And of course it was sad that Atalanta didn't go through, but I think that was a big moment for Neymar and that club. And they finally have their symbolic moment of being in a Champions League win, and now can they take it forward? We'll find out. But it's been great, as Luke said. It's a festival of sport right now. Everything's on. It's wonderful to watch.
Guys, I'm just thinking about PSV in the 90s.
Yeah.
Five semi-finals, but what a team. Remember the strip and the shot?
Yeah. We were all smiling when James was mentioning it.
I loved it. It just got me right back there. The first time I saw Ginola play, and I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I'd never seen a winger that size. And they're playing it into his chest, and he's holding off the full back, he's coming inside, and the hair's flowing, and he's the best looking football player you've ever seen in your life. It was just like, it was, I was back there, I was 14, I was 15 again, and then obviously I was fortunate enough to be, I guess, 12, 13, 14, in the changing room when he came to Newcastle, and in the canteen. And I'll never forget, he's this guy who's like a movie star. He had this glow like round the bottom. He always looked amazing. He had on the best of gear while everyone else was wearing tracksuits back in the days when, they were finished training. And I go upstairs, we're in the canteen at Durham University, and, I just want to be near him and try and, watch what he's doing. And I walk in, and he's sitting there with his legs crossed with a little cup of coffee, smoking a cigarette. I'll never forget it. I'm like, look at this guy. Only he could get away with that. He looks so cool. He's just smoking a cigarette. The hair's flowing. He's got a little sip in the coffee. he was my hero, guys. What a football player. Love watching him on the TV. Got to see him in person a few times as well. Magnificent.
Yeah, class.
I just remember everybody saying it was David Ginola when he came in, right, in England, because there was no like finesse. Yeah. David Ginola. He became David Ginola after a few years, but at the start he was David Ginola to everybody. It was a great video you posted this week, Stevie, going back to Newcastle days. Bobby Robson with that team talk.
Yeah.
Fascinating to see that.
Magnificent. It really took me back, Luke, to the days where we would be upstairs and eat our pre-match meal, and Bobby would go through the team talk, of course, before we went down in the dressing room area. And I guess it was a fly-in-the-wall documentary. I can't remember why they were filming it, but they must have been doing some kind of documentary thing. And everything to like the suits, the shirt and tie that we were wearing was a club shirt and tie, and the nostalgia involved there. And you know, Bobby was a guy we had the utmost respect for, but there was a lot of like internal humour to things that he did as well, because he was so consistent with the way that he said things and the way that he went about things. And I was laughing so hard, you know, as you see Jermaine Jennings have a little smirk at what Bobby's asking of him, and Alan Shearer and Steve Harper are up the back and they're on the bit of a joke. It was amazing to watch. I remember the game we played Man City at St James's. I think Alan scored, and maybe it was about 15 seconds. It went right back to less than that, back to the goalie. Carlo Nash tries to kick it up the field, off Alan's bum into the back of the net, and we ended up winning 2 or 3-0. But great days and a great man. You know, the more time goes on, the more nostalgia I feel for many things about him. His strengths, his qualities, his humour, his charisma. That's the biggest thing. Even in that 1 minute clip, but his charisma just bursts at the screen. The way that he says things, the way that he explained it, phenomenal guy.
It's time for the Benjamin Moore do-it-yourself play of the game. And we could have gone back, looking back on the MLS Is Back tournament through any moment really of the tournament. Some great goals that we saw, like that Philly goal where they go the length of the pitch. There was the Andy Polo where he comes off the bench with that play of the game and smashes it into the top corner. There was some suggestion that we might pick the Orlando goal, but no, Stephen overrules everyone because the play of the game is a central defender coming forward from the back and scoring a straightforward header.
Straightforward header. Let's see you score it, Luke.
Strikers do that all the time.
No, this is a terrific goal. This is the moment of the match.
What about the delivery as well, Valeri?
Right, so it's about the delivery and it's also about the moment of the match, KJ, because Orlando did the better of this first 26 minutes.
Yeah.
And Portland just started to come into it a bit, and then they get this free kick, and I think I said that on the commentary, you know, you just get the feeling that it would be so like Portland to put this in the back of the net, and then the ball's perfect, Mabiala's header's really good, and all of a sudden they're 1-0 up. And I think that was a moment they sort of felt they had their number, KJ. Would you agree? They sort of went, right, okay, we've weathered the early storm, we've went a goal up, and we actually know how to get the job done against you guys. And I think that was the moment that they won MLS Is Back tournament, when they put that ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, dangerous from set pieces as well, and set pieces were pivotal, really. We saw Moutinho there lose Mabiala, and my mind went back to the semis when Kai Wagner was probably the other good left back in the tournament, lost his marker, didn't he, on the goal? Was it obviously scored? I think didn't he, the header?
Yeah.
So that they do, obviously, it just looks like a ball in and delivery. But I mean, you can speak about this more than me, Stevie. But when a lot of people look to defend set pieces, they want to put the centre backs on the best headers of the game, and maybe the two centre backs are probably considered the best defenders to head that away. But Orlando didn't have one of their centre backs on Mabiala. Just all the confusion that allowed them to be matched up with Moutinho, similar to the way Abobisi got away from Kai Wagner in the semi-final as well.
Yeah, to describe the free kick one, it's probably because they're in a line, so you don't normally pick up guys when you're defending a wide free kick. You'll go in a certain order in the line, and then you'll just take whoever comes into your zone. So I can sort of see why Moutinho was on Mabiala, but that was a mismatch. He got it wrong. The Abobisi and Wagner one, you know, it shows the strength of Portland. This is why they score a lot of goals from free kicks. The delivery's perfect, corners and free kicks. Delivery's in the right spot, and they have many different guys that are very dangerous in the air. Abobisi being one of them. But you look at the list and you decide who the markers are. You go, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the best headers of the ball. But Abobisi's probably third or fourth. That's why Wagner's on him, but he's still magnificent in the air. Really good team, Portland. Gritty team. Not exciting to watch like in Orlando, maybe. Not quite as fluid, but really believe in each other, know what they're all about. And I think defensively, we're the best team by a mile in the tournament in terms of organisation, working for each other, plugging holes, doing the hard yards to get the victory in that kind of heat, which was in the end the distinguishing factor why they won the tournament.
And they win a tournament with two central defenders scoring the goals in the final. It doesn't happen very often. I think somebody tweeted out that it's only the second time since Timbers joined MLS that they've had two defenders score in the same game to win the game.
Yeah.
Portland Timbers, the MLS Is Back champions overall. I think it was an excellent tournament and really good to see Major League Soccer get back into it. Just before we go, what are the chances, KJ, that we see some sort of tournament like this next year?
Probably, I would say maybe less than 50% next year. I just feel that right now the priority is to try and get through this season, and something like that may take a little bit more infrastructure to get it right. I also, listening in between the what Don Garber said, the commissioner, I feel like that he wants to make sure that the home markets are the priority at the moment. But having said that, the more I talk through the answer, the more I understand that we don't know what the global pandemic is going to bring. We may even get one of these, another tournament start to get the playoffs done. So who knows? But I think going forward, I think it would be naive to think that they wouldn't look at this and think we should repeat this at some point at the beginning of a season or something. You could even split it. You can have a West in a LA or an East somewhere else, find an inside facility in Atlanta or something, and play that. An ability to play a bunch of games and have like an Eastern champion and a Western champion, and they can maybe meet at some point during the season. So I loved it. I love the competitiveness of the games. I think MLS is very regional, and it's important that people in different markets watch other teams. And they had a reason to do that in this tournament because they had direct consequences on the actions of their own team to see how they're going to do. So yeah, hopefully they can take this going forward. I think Jim Curtin hit the nail on the head, our friend of the show, who said, we don't have to do everything just because everybody else does it the same way. And, maybe this is a story. It certainly is a story for another day, but I think there's a lot of different things MLS can do in terms of how and when they format their schedule from start to end of the season, Stevie.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, KJ. I think the consistency of this tournament really benefited the fans, benefited the league to know when games are. It's an issue that we've had, games in different markets, different times, and it's hard to find unless you're an avid fan of MLS. You knew exactly when these games were going to be, schedules out there, and I think that consistency helped. Football, like I said, was really good. Ideal scenario, I agree with you. I don't think MLS want this next year. I think they'd love to see the regularity of the season and the schedule, but we don't know where we are if there's any issues with that, and crowds are an issue getting into stadiums and home markets, then I think there's every chance of it. But I think this is coming back in the future, 100%. This will be rolled out again. There'll be some kind of tournament between MLS clubs, either at the beginning of the year or in the summer months in the coming years.
Thanks to everyone with us today. Thanks to Ali Curtis of TFC, to James as well, bringing us some fantastic insight into the world of Lille and what Jonathan David will face there. Who knows, next Thursday, maybe we'll be looking ahead or looking back on a game that TFC's played. We'll see if the Canadian schedule gets confirmed in the next few days and how quickly that comes to fruition. But for now, it's great to have everybody with us every Thursday. Really thank you for being with us on the show, and have a great day.
Thank you.